Well, thank you everyone for joining today for another Tech Tuesday Demo Day. I have the pleasure of introducing today's speaker, Brittany Pearsall. Britt is a principal IBM Cloud technical specialist and has worked in IBM Cloud for 8 years. And currently she is specializing in VMware, which is today's topic. So Britt, take it away.
Sure. Thanks, Danielle. So what I've got today is a couple of slides, and then what I'd really like to do is get into the portal and just kind of show off our various options for VMware. We're going to talk about, some of our differentiators, what they're useful for, why anybody cares, that sort of thing. We're a pretty small group, so if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt me. If I'm boring you and you've heard this information, you want to talk about something else, or if you see something interesting, I'm flexible and I can kind of go in a bunch of different directions. But to get us started, we're going to go over, some differentiators, some use cases, and then why anybody cares about any of this. So can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yep.
Okay, so first thing I like to do when I do these presentations is just kind of level set with everybody what we mean, right? So we're talking about cloud here. Cloud means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. You've got people who are building their own clouds in their own data centers, which is more of a traditional IT kind of model over here on the left side. And then you've got everything running through infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, which again could mean one of any millions of things. And then up through like software as a service, serverless as a service, basically up the stack to, I just want to consume a bunch of stuff, but I don't want to deal with anything under the covers. Our focus today is on VMware, and VMware really fits into this middle, primarily infrastructure as a service, but a little bit platform as a service. We've got some products that fit more into that category, and we'll talk about that a little bit as we go along. But at the end of the day, if we're being honest, VMware on the cloud is infrastructure as a service, and our goal is to deliver it in as cloudy, consumable way as possible, and I think we do a really good job of that at IBM, and we'll talk about how we do that and how that benefits our customers. But at the end of the day, we're talking about servers. We're talking about servers you don't own, that you rent by the hour or by the month. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, is primarily infrastructure as a service. We're going to go a little bit into containers, a little bit some other stuff, but we're not talking about machine learning or AI or any of that sort of stuff. This is servers at the end of the day. The other thing I like to do is establish IBM's credentials with VMware. I'm always surprised at the number of people who go, IBM and VMware work together. We have VMware and the IBM Cloud. I've never heard of this. Where the reality is IBM and VMware have been partners for like 21 of the 22 years that VMware has been in business. IBM is VMware's #1 business partner worldwide. We manage more VMware workloads than VMware manages. We're also one of their #1 consumers. So we consume most of their network products, a lot of their storage products. And from a cloud perspective, we were the first ones to bring VMware to a public cloud model, to like a consumable infrastructure as a service model. And that was way back in 2016. So I know a lot of the other cloud product or cloud service providers get a lot of hype today. If you go to VMworld, I was there a couple months ago. There's a lot of focus on some of the other CSPs, and it's because IBM is kind of like old news now. But that said, there are still people out there that don't know we're doing this. I believe we have the biggest VMware footprint in the public cloud today. We've got over 2,000 customers running in IBM Cloud, and we've migrated over 100,000 individual virtual machines into our cloud. So our footprint is substantial. Yet, there are some people still that don't know we're doing this. So moral of the story here is that we've got the chops. We've been doing this a long time, both on-premise, as a service, and in the cloud. And I want to go over kind of what we're offering today, how it's changed recently, and what we're looking at in the future. So when we're talking VMware in the cloud, what we're really talking about is what does VMware in the cloud bring that you can't do with VMware on-premise, right? There's nobody on planet Earth that's going to be like building a new application in the cloud and is like, hey, I'm definitely going to stand up VMware in the cloud to build this brand new application. Like, nobody does that. You're building something new, you're going to go more, software as a service, that sort of thing. Fortunately, VMware is the #1 hypervisor worldwide, and there are a lot of people running VMware on-premise that don't want to run it on-premise anymore. And why don't they want to do that? They run into capacity issues. A lot of the standard talking points we have when we talk about running your own data centers, right? Long lead times to obtain more resources, right? Maybe you don't have a great disaster recovery strategy because you don't feel like renting a secondary building in addition to your own building. Your infrastructure, you're committed to that infrastructure for somewhere between 3, 5, 8, 10 years. You've got to deal with all the networking between these sites, lots of upfront capital spending, not a lot of ability to deal with spikes, either on a day-to-day basis or a season-by-season basis. And what we see with a lot of customers on premise is they tend to have these kind of like Frankenstein-y environments that have just kind of grown and infected lots of data centers like as companies have grown. So those all present challenges for our customers. Not to mention the fact that they're dealing with their own data centers. They've got to deal with contractors. They've got to deal with getting hands in the building to actually fix these servers when they break. Multiple vendors providing them with everything from servers to networking equipment to licenses, et cetera, et cetera. So there are a lot of challenges when you're running your own data center on premise that moving your data center to cloud, even if you don't go entirely cloud native and you're still at the end of the day running your own VMware clusters, cloud smooths a lot of those edges and makes your environment a lot easier to maintain, to monitor, to secure, and to manage. And so again, when we're talking about VMware in the cloud, we're not looking at a lot of greenfield stuff. We're looking at customers, companies, industries that have a lot of VMware on premise and don't really want to deal with the headaches of their own data centers anymore. Those are really our target customers here, our target workloads. Why don't these people move to the cloud? Plenty of different reasons. There's still a little bit of the stigma of like, oh, cloud is insecure. They're not my servers. I can't go hug them, pet them, touch them. So therefore, they're not real. There's a lot of access questions when you look at a bunch of how VMware is delivered between a number of different CSPs. Some of them provided as a managed service. Some of them block you from some kind of key components to your VMware cluster. So you don't have the right, necessarily the same level of access. Migrating is a headache if you want to go from VMware to not VMware. A lot of people say, oh, cloud only does cloud native. Everything's containerized, everything's a service, but I really just want to stick with my VMware. Those tend to be some of the roadblocks. Security is a big one. Access is a big one. And then people not wanting to learn new skills is a big one. And so the way IBM delivers VMware in the cloud, again, mitigates all of these roadblocks and makes it very, very easy to consume these servers and stand them up and move your workloads without needing to do a ton of replatforming, re-architecting, learning a bunch of new skills, et cetera. It's really, when we're talking VMware and IBM Cloud, exactly like VMware on premise, you just don't own the servers anymore. So it's a great conversation to have with our customers when we say, oh, you want VMware? We can deliver VMware in a number of different ways that make your life easier. So why IBM Cloud specifically versus some of our other competitors, right? We used to be the only name in the game when it came to VMware in a cloud setting. Now we've got some competition, but we really think we're delivering it better and more flexibly and more securely than a lot of the other CSPs, and sometimes even better than VMware itself. So the pillars we lean on are open innovation, security leadership, and enterprise grade, right? IBM's always been committed to an open industry. And even though VMware is a quote unquote proprietary technology, we have taken some of our open industry standards and our innovation and applied it into the VMware environments. We'll talk about some application modernization plays in a little bit. But what we want to do is enable our customers to consume maybe some newer technologies, maybe some open source technologies without necessarily giving up entirely on the VMware environments they know and love. Security is a big one for us. We have worked with a number of different industries to come up with some specific architecture frameworks, product bundles that allow our customers to secure their environments in the IBM Cloud more often, even more securely than they do on premise. So we have a number of tools that are built in that are easy to consume, bill, et cetera, that will allow you to do things like data encryption, security and compliance monitoring, edge-to-edge threat protection. All of these things are built in, like I said, easy to use, easy to consume, whereas standing those things up maybe yourself on premise in your own data center would be more of a headache than you're looking for. And so you can increase the level of security more easily in the cloud than you can yourself. And again, enterprise grade. So we built this thing for our customers, for those thousands of customers that we're already working with on premise worldwide. So it's not, it's not like sheets to the wind. We just gave you some servers and some licenses, like good luck. We've actually developed a number of products in tandem with VMware to ensure that our customers get the best experience possible using VMware on the IBM Cloud. A couple of the other points we like to make: we've got the highest level of encryption of any other cloud provider. We have FIPS 140-2 level 4 encryption components that we can integrate into these environments. We have certain products where our SLA payouts are higher, our availability SLAs are higher, all built on our framework architecture using our products to deliver these environments at the level where our customers need us to deliver them to. And then, like I said, financial services ready. Cloud is something you'll hear IBMers talk about a lot. Sometimes it's just FS Cloud. We've worked with the financial services industry to come up with more or less a playbook and an architecture that says, if you build it to these standards, use these tools, etc., we can run financial services workloads absolutely no problem. So we're bringing in a very high level of security and auditability and visibility into our environments, so that even our most secure, most kind of worried industries can feel secure running in the cloud. I just want to go through a couple of use cases before we actually start talking about what technology we're delivering here. I'm not going to go into each one of these because some of them are boring. But these are kind of the top 5 use cases we see when we're running VMware in the cloud. First one is hybrid cloud transformation. That is doing a lot of heavy lifting. I would say the number one instance that I see customers moving to cloud with VMware is one of these things: data center consolidation, capacity expansion, or infrastructure modernization. So we'll talk about that one. Transformation and modernization of VMware workloads. So that's integrating VMware with Red Hat OpenShift, dipping your toes into the water of containerization. Data protection, disaster recovery, high availability. I have a lot of conversations with customers that you would be shocked to learn that they just don't have disaster recovery. And we go, what happens if you lose their data center? And they're like, well, it'd take us 6 months to order some new servers and get them stood up somewhere else. We're like, well, that's not great. Is this a business critical application you're running, a business critical workload? How much money would you guys lose if you're doing that? And so we start a lot of conversations with cloud being that disaster recovery point. Migration to SAP HANA. I'm going to be honest, I'm not our SAP guy. I've got a guy if you want to talk about SAP. The takeaway here is we can run SAP HANA on VMware on IBM Cloud. And then risk mitigation and compliance readiness, again, is a big one for IBM with our FS Cloud architecture with our compliance ready bundle. And we'll talk about that. Why does it keep doing that? So like I said, hybrid cloud transformation, that first one does a lot of the heavy lifting. Again, 80 to 90% of the customers I talk to are interested in VMware on the cloud for one of 3 reasons. They want more capacity. So they want to move to a hybrid cloud model where some of their stuff is running on premise, but they need to burst into the cloud for, weeks or months or a season, whatever it is, because they can't obtain the resources they need on the timeline they need them, and then get rid of them when they don't want to, or when they don't need them, which is a big benefit to cloud. It's not just getting things when you want them, but getting rid of them when you don't want them. So bursting into the cloud, data center consolidation. So I work with a lot of customers who, have kind of spread their workloads over multiple locations. The locations are aging out, contracts are coming to an end, infrastructure is coming end of life, that sort of thing. And they're looking to consolidate, and they're looking to take some of that administrative overhead off of their own plate. That's a really big one. And then The last one here is going to be consolidation. Oh, infrastructure of modernization again. So this ties back to the other one where they're like, we've just had these servers for a really long time. We're not interested in doing a hardware refresh and putting up all of the capex to completely buy new servers for our entire data center. How can the cloud help us in here? So we do a lot of that sort of work, a lot of just straight lifting and shifting on-premise workloads into the cloud as is, giving them brand new hardware, allowing them to lease it from us by the hour or by the month, allowing them to replace the hardware as they want, and giving them a lot of flexibility with what hardware they're getting from us, a lot of licensing options, etc., which I will show you once we kind of get into the portal. But this is probably my number one use case, is just people wanting to get out of the data center business, dump it somewhere else, but for whatever reason don't necessarily have the time or the development cycles to migrate something into a different cloud platform, a proprietary cloud platform. They don't want to learn new stuff, or maybe they've got a bunch of tools that they're using today that integrate very tightly with vCenter or VMware, and so they can't give up that platform. And they're just like, really just replace our servers, give us new servers. This is more or less what that use case is, and it's a big one for us. Modernization of the VMware workloads themselves. So this is different from new servers, faster processors, give me the latest Intel chips. This is actually getting into the workload level and saying, okay, everything runs on virtual machines on VMware today, but does it have to? And like I said, IBM has been committed to open standards and containerization for many years. You might have heard we spent a hilarious amount of money on Red Hat OpenShift a couple of years ago. And so what we've done since then is build a platform where we can actually run Red Hat OpenShift alongside our VMware workloads. So our customers can deploy virtual machines next to a more or less orchestrated containerized platform, which lets them start experimenting with containerization. We're not saying, hey, you need to absolutely refactor, re-architect, recode your entire application today. But if you want to take out one little piece, right, you've got a web app and you want to say, well, what happens if I just move the kind of web front end to a containers? Let's test that out, but let's not go whole hog here and redo the whole thing. That's kind of what this path towards modernization looks like. Allows the customers to take bits and pieces, run them alongside, and try out new technologies without necessarily committing to giving up the application they've been running well for however many years. And then beyond that, if they start containerization, we can also start introducing them to other pieces of the catalog. So not only can we deliver VMware on bare metal servers, but we've got a whole platform catalog full of Watson, machine learning, Kubernetes, object storage, different kinds of storage, things as a service, database as a service. By moving their workload into the cloud, they can start to take advantage of some of those other things. So going higher up the stack into platform as a service, software as a service. Again, without necessarily giving up everything they know and love today, they can start integrating brand new bits and pieces as they find them able, willing to test them out, with the time on their hands, that sort of thing. So it's cool to see our customers being able to kind of do this in a hybrid manner to say, keep most of the stuff I know, but let's see what's new out there. Let's see what we can test. Let's see what bits and pieces we can bring in to maybe modernize our application from the inside out. Again, a big one, another big use case for VMware in the cloud is going to be disaster recovery and high availability. So a lot of customers come to us and they don't want to move production into the cloud today, but they're looking for a low-cost disaster recovery site. And we say, great, we can do that. Benefits of cloud is you don't need to pay for an entire disaster recovery site with full capacity every day of every year, like you would if you were to do it yourself on premise, right? Because a disaster happens if you're running it yourself, you need to make sure that you have enough capacity to run your business off-site. But you can't call somebody up and be like, hey, I'm going to need a bunch of servers now. And they'll be like, great, we'll see you in 6 months. In the cloud, you can. So you can run a small footprint. You can ensure you have enough day-to-day capacity for maybe your business critical workloads, but then you can lean on the cloud to expand that capacity when and if you need it. So whether that's a disaster recovery test, once or twice a year, or an actual disaster occurs, you can log into the cloud portal and say, I need new servers, and we'll say, great, we'll have them to you in 4 hours. So it's a great use case for those that are maybe skittish about committing to running their full production workload in the cloud, but allowing them to have that peace of mind as that backup, where they can say, I have capacity, I have access to additional capacity if and when I need it. We also can design environments because of IBM Cloud's global footprint and the way our data centers are connected, networked, and exist. We can talk about how we can deploy extra high availability clusters into multiple data centers. So now we're taking more of a modern approach to an architecture framework. Instead of saying, okay, here's our primary site and here's our secondary site, we're going to fail over doing XYZ if and when something goes sideways, we can actually implement a cluster that's stretched across multiple physical locations to give you that level of reliability and availability without necessarily making a bunch of copies all over the place, doing backups, having a disaster recovery runbook. So it's a little bit of a different way of thinking about how that architecture goes. But because of the footprint we have, and like I said, the way we're networked and the products we have in our arsenal, we can talk about stretch clusters, stretch vSAN clusters, and allowing our customers to run in multiple, what we call zones, just a fancy way of saying a data center. And then the last one, again, is this risk mitigation and compliance readiness. So we have a lot of customers in big industries that have to meet certain regulatory compliance. HIPAA is a big one, PII, PCI, financial services. Again, there's a lot riding on the security of the financial services industry. We have bundled our products and built our products and architected our products in such a way as to take advantage of a lot of third-party products, something like Kevionics or HITrust, in addition to the inherent security in dedicated hardware, in VMware monitoring, that sort of thing, that allows us to deliver these environments. And so we've got a number of different architectures, we've got a number of different runbooks for implementing environments to meet certain standards. Some of them come right out of the box that way. Some of them require a fair bit of additional hands-on implementation after the fact. But the moral of the story is that we can build these environments to meet nearly any regulatory compliance that a customer would have. So we've got SOC reports, we can meet GDPR, we can do FedRAMP even, FedRAMP medium, FedRAMP high. We've got ITAR options. We've got a lot of, we check a lot of those boxes for compliance for a number of different industries across the world in a number of different countries. And again, SAP HANA. I'm not the SAP person, but we can run SAP HANA. If you're interested, come talk to me. I'll hook you up with the right guy. So what's actually on the truck? A lot of our customers get a little bit confused because we do have 5 or 6 different VMware products, right? So if you go to IBM.Cloud and search VMware, a lot of different things come back. So I just want to go quickly at a high level through this, and then we're going to focus on our what we call VCS, which is our dedicated VMware offering once we go into the portal. I didn't make the slide, so I'm going to kind of skip around a little bit. So first in the middle, VMware vSphere ESXi on bare metal IaaS. This is like the Wild West of VMware implementation, right? This is literally like you can get bare metal servers from us. If you want licenses from us, you can get them, but it's optional. No guardrails, build whatever you want, right? If you want to build a 1-node cluster with VMware 5.7, you can do that on bare metal servers. We're not going to stop you. So this is really as true IaaS as it gets. Implement gateway appliances, you can implement virtual or physical firewalls, whatever you want to do. Real double-edged sword here, because if you know what you're doing, you can do a lot of really interesting things. Implement NSX or not, implement vSAN or not. You don't necessarily have to go buy the book if that's not what you want. You can also get yourself into a lot of trouble that way, obviously, if you don't know what you're doing. So to build upon that, we have a couple of other products. First one is going to be vSphere ESXi in VPC. This is our newest VMware product, and what this is essentially this is VMware bare metal, but it's in our VPC platform. VPC, virtual private cloud, We rolled that out a couple years ago. Essentially what it does is it makes a lot of the extra pieces of an environment. So a lot of the networking components, a lot of the connectivity components, the storage components, security components, a lot of those are provided as a service. So that's in contrast to kind of the bare metal solution where it's like, okay, here's your server. Now here's your physical firewall. You're going to attach some storage, or you're going to build some storage. A lot of it's do it yourself. VPC provides a lot of that as a service. If we're being honest, this is our newest one. So the catalog itself is fairly limited. Bare metal IaaS, literally thousands and thousands of different available configurations. VPC IaaS, I think there are three sizes, and your choices are vSAN or no vSAN. So the catalog's still small today, but it is expanding all the time. The biggest use case I see for customers with vSphere in VPC are going to be customers that are using VPC for other things, and VMware isn't necessarily their focus. If VMware is really what their entire environment is, we have better options. But I do see customers that run most things in VPC on kind of native virtual machines, but they need one weird virtual appliance, right? They want to implement like an SD-WAN or a specific security device. And they're like, I've got this virtual appliance, I need somewhere to run it. Great. Here, have a VMware server to stand it up in VPC. It's integrated in with the rest of your network framework, et cetera, and you can bring whatever you need to the cloud. That's kind of the biggest use case there, is to augment existing VMware, existing VPC, environments. So those are the two middle ones. Those are highly do-it-yourself. Here's a bare metal server. Here's some license to go forth. On the far right, what we also offer is VMware as a service. So we call this VMware Shared. It is a fairly new platform. I think it rolled out about a year and a half ago. What this is IBM managed VMware delivered to our customers as a multi-tenant platform where they consume just the virtual machines. So it's actually based on a VMware product called vCloud Director. And again, IBM does all the management of the infrastructure. So, we're managing VMware, we're managing the networking, we're managing, we don't actually give you access to vCenter with this one, you get vCloud Director. It's a cool platform. It has a lot of benefits, primarily in the fact that you're consuming virtual machines instead of physical hosts. So it's very flexible. You can spin up individual virtual machines in literally seconds and then get rid of them again. So if you've got a highly volatile environment where the number of virtual machines themselves are changing constantly, you can implement VMware Shared to be that level of flexibility. It's also just dead simple to consume, right? IBM takes all of the guesswork out of it. You're just like, hey, I need a Red Hat virtual machine that's a 4x16. I don't want to think about anything else. We can deliver that to you. Where I see this being used a lot is with customers who maybe don't have a huge VMware footprint. I've had people come to me and be like, I really only have 6 or 7 servers. And I'm like, well, a full 3-node cluster is going to be way overkill for you, but VMware Shared is the perfect solution. So smaller customers lean on it a lot. It's also a great solution for disaster recovery because you can get these virtual machines on demand as you need them, but you only pay for them if you're using them. So you can set up an environment where you have either VMware on-premise or the last one we're going to talk about, VMware dedicated, and it's sending its backups and it's replicating your virtual machines into VMware Shared, but you're not paying for any of those resources because you're not using them. You're basically just paying for storage to keep those virtual machines kind of in your back pocket for when you do need them, but you're not paying for resources you're not using. So VMware Shared is a great low-cost disaster recovery option, also a great option for just smaller VMware environments that aren't necessarily big enough to need a whole bunch of physical hosts. The kind of shining jewel in the VMware portfolio in IBM Cloud is this one on the far left, and it has a dumb name, vCenter Service. We call it VCS. It's been called VMware Dedicated. What this is this took our original bare metal platform. It took VMware's original platform, VMware Cloud Foundation, got rid of all the parts we didn't like. It made it bigger, better. So we've actually worked with VMware to put together a number. So first we put together servers that are VMware certified. So if you order VCS, you're never going to get anything that isn't on a hardware compatibility list with VMware. So that was the first thing we did. What we also did is we worked with VMware to put up together a bunch of standardized best practices and then force you to order them that way. So things like if you're implementing NSX, you must have a minimum 3-node cluster. That has to do with the way NSX is deployed, the number of managers, et cetera, et cetera. It really wants 3 hosts. So we say, you have to order 3 hosts now. Same thing, vSAN, minimum 4 hosts. But when you compare it to VMware's VCF, and when you compare it to all the other VMware cloud products out there in the market, we've made it a lot more flexible. So there are dozens of different deployment options for these servers. And we're going to go into the portal and I'm going to show them off. You have the option to bring your own licenses. You have your option to use our licenses. Most of the other cloud service providers force you to use their licenses. We make things optional. So vSAN, not required. HCX, not required. If you go use VMware and AWS or Google, those things are required. Maybe you don't need them. You don't want them. Why are you paying for them? Like I said, it's flexible. vSAN is an option, but not a requirement. And in addition to all of this, so we allow you to really design your cluster exactly as you want it. We give you a number of different server options. They're not t-shirt sizes. You can mix and match processors, drives, RAM, etc. We've also built a very powerful automation on the back end, automation engine on the back end to stand up this cluster for you. So we took out a ton of the day one administrative efforts that customers go through. So things like installing vCenter, assigning all of these hosts to vCenter, telling them they're a cluster, setting up the data stores. All of those things are taken care of by IBM's automation engine. And what this means for our customers is that we can give you a fully functional VMware cluster in 8 to 12 hours. Sorry, that's a lie. 12 to 24 hours. That's what I tell people to be safe. But between clicking the button and saying, give me a cluster, our automation engine runs off, stands it up, and in less than 24 hours, you're going to get that back to you. Fully functional. So fully functional vCenter, fully functional cluster. But at that point, what we do is we hand it over to you as the customer, and it is your cluster. So this is not a managed service like it is in AWS. It's not a cluster with a front end on it, like a vCloud Director, like our shared. This is true full vCenter access, full host access to a cluster that just doesn't happen to reside in your data center. So I'm going to show that off in a second, but it's very cool. What that allows our customers to do is bring in all of the tools and all of the skills and expertise that they already have in-house and use it in the cloud. So you don't have to learn anything new. You're not paying anybody anything that you could be doing yourself, right? But if you've got plugins for vCenter, those are going to work. If you've got a very specific deployment, the way the hosts are configured together, you can do that because you have full access to these hosts and full access to vCenter. So that's what's on the truck. Like I said, Wild Wild West, VMware on bare metal servers, build whatever you want, no guardrails. VMware on VPC, if you've already got a VPC environment in IBM Cloud, but you need a couple of additional virtual appliances for whatever reason, good option. VMware Shared, IBM managed VMware platform based on vCloud Director, where our customers are consuming multi-tenant virtual machines. And then the heavy hitter, VMware Dedicated, dedicated clusters configured and personalized to whatever our customers' workloads needs are, that they fully own, operate, and manage. So that's most of our customers use VMware Dedicated. And then on top of that, I don't want to get into this too much, but when we kind of perfected the VMware cluster deployment options and we made them flexible and customizable, et cetera, we said, what can we do on top of that? And on top of the answer was we went to our third-party partners and said, give us your products and let us integrate them into our platform. So the big ones we focus on here are Veeam and Zerto are going to be for your disaster recovery and backups. Veeam being our primary backup partner, Zerto being a replication partner for disaster recovery. We've also got partnership with Fortinet and F5 for a couple of virtual appliances that I'll show off in a second. and high trust and Cavionics for security, compliance, monitoring, auditing, etc. So all of these things are consumable through the IBM Cloud platform. You don't have to go to these companies individually, get additional licenses or anything else. They're folded into your IBM Cloud contract, into your IBM Cloud monthly billing statement. And in most cases, they're very easy to, in a one-click deployment, to add them to your cluster. So we sell them in bundles, and I'm not going to go through each of these bundles. You can take a look at these later if you want. But security, compliance, compliance readiness, our resiliency, managed cloud infrastructure is going to be the shared one. These build. Okay. And then OpenShift, as I mentioned earlier, we've also bundled OpenShift into this VMware platform, so you can do a one-click deploy of OpenShift. HCX is an option. Lots of different options, and we'll go through the portal. And I can show those off, which I think is what I'm going to do right now. While I get that set up, I'm leaving you with the top 10 reasons to run VMware workloads on IBM Cloud. Native root access and visibility all the way to the bare metal servers is a big one. Again, this is not a managed service. We're not locking you out of any aspect of this VMware cluster when you get the dedicated option. Flexible configs and licensing, storage options, secure design and compliance readiness, ready to go. We can minimize all of our downtime. We can minimize data loss with the additional tools that we give you to build into your cluster. We've got a global footprint, lots of data centers, and it's free to transfer data between all those data centers. So, if you need a multi-zone region, or if you need to send your backup files to another country, another side of the country, all of that's included in the network footprint within IBM. Migration is easy, and you can continue to reuse your additional VMware experience. You don't need to learn anything new. You don't need to do any deep transformation of your existing workloads. You can literally just pick them up and drop them from your on-premise workload into IBM Cloud. But once you've done that, if you want to take advantage of some of the more modern techniques and modern technologies, we're going to allow you to run those right next to your VMware platform, whether that's integrating OpenShift or reaching out into more of a platform and a software as a service components. All of that's available to you within the IBM Cloud. So here it is. Can everyone see my new screen? We're done with slides.
We can see it.
Perfect. So this is the IBM Cloud catalog. And what I wanted to show you, like I said, is our VMware dedicated platform, show off just a lot of the different options and why it's so flexible and why people think it's cool. But you can see we do have a number of different options. So we've got our bare metal servers for Classic, like I said, Wild West of VMware, bare metal servers for VPC, t-shirt sizes, about 5 options for that, but easy to consume, built into the VMware platform. And then here's our solutions catalog. So this is where our dedicated and our shared solutions come together. We're going to see if I'm still logged in or if I've talked too much and it's kicked me out. Excellent. So again, this is our VMware Solutions catalog. So the VMware Solutions shared, where you can come in here and order an individual virtual machine or a virtual data center. And then the dedicated is really the cool one. So that's what we're going to look at today. VMware regulated, like I said, we've got a number of different tools and architectures. And what we've done is we've actually automated the provisioning of a lot of those pieces so you can start the architecture. And I'll just show up the architecture overview real quick here. What we've done is, again, worked with various industries, financial services, telecom, and otherwise to say, what's the most secure, best way to deploy a VMware cluster and use all these tools to meet these compliance recommendations. And then we built an engine to build it that way. So you can see we've got a couple of different clusters for isolation purposes, and we've got a number of different tools, both for monitoring, compliance, and encryption and security. So the one-click deployment of this stuff comes out of that VMware regulated workloads. It doesn't work out of the box, don't get me wrong. It doesn't just like magically make this environment compliant and good to go. But it does bring in all these tools and allow you to start the process of setting up rules, setting up notifications, setting up encryption schemes, et cetera, et cetera. so that you can get to an environment that is compliant with whatever you need it to be. But VMware Dedicated is really where we shine. Why do we shine? It's really because of the flexibility. If you go to any other CSPs, you usually have 5 or 6 different options. You're usually forced to use their licenses. They come as a bundle. You can't opt out of anything. So big ones I see there are HCX and vSAN. And in some cases, it's just kind of a black box. So for example, VMware and AWS is actually a VMware managed service that just uses AWS servers in the background. Customers don't actually have access to anything in there. It's just a managed service to them. This is very different. So when you come in, you order, you say IBM, this is exactly the cluster I want. So we used to have more options for vSphere versions. We don't anymore. Everyone's using NSXT, NSXV is end of life. But licensing is a big one. You can bring your own license or you can use ours, right? So I will provide, give us the license key or get it from IBM. So we allow our customers to use like existing contracts they have in place with VMware. If they've got perpetual licensing, something like that, they don't want to double pay for those licenses. Great, bring them on into the cloud. Lots of options for the types of license depending on what functionality you need for NSX vSphere. We've got a lot of different places to deploy this. So I believe our VMware platform is deployed in something like 25 data centers worldwide, maybe more than that. But we can essentially meet our customers wherever they need us to, whether that's Hong Kong, Sydney, Frankfurt, London, US-based, lots of different options, South America, Sao Paulo, that sort of thing. We're also SAP certified. I mentioned SAP HANA as an option. But this is where we allow you to really match the cluster to your workload. And so you work with an IBM Cloud, technical salesperson to gather your requirements. And then our job is to sit here and go, okay, here's the best fit for your workload. We've got 8 different server sizes here and a couple of different server generations, and then a number of different RAM options. So if you do the math here, it's something like 30 or 40 different server configurations that you can really match to the workload, right? The goal is to make sure that all of these servers are used at a high rate. We don't want to have leftover RAM. We don't want to have leftover CPU. And we see some of our customers running into that when they use other CSPs because they come in fewer sizes. So if you want a tiny server with a whole bunch of RAM because your workloads are super RAM constrained, we can deliver that to you. And along with that comes all the cost optimization with that, because you're using everything you're purchasing, you're not paying for a bunch of stuff you don't use. You can choose the number of bare metal servers. We can go up to 59 servers in a single cluster. And then down here, you can see storage, again, is optional. You can choose to use vSAN. You don't have to. So that comes down to requirements, customer preference, that sort of thing, performance requirements. And once you do vSAN, again, we've got a number of different disks to choose from. How many disks do you want in each box? A lot of our competitors will tell you, nope, this is how many disks you're getting in a box. You don't get any say in that. So if you need fewer servers with lots of storage, we can deliver that. If you want lots of servers with just a small amount of storage, we can deliver that too. And again, license, again, I can provide, or you can purchase it from us. We also have the option to do some separation of clusters. So if you want an edge cluster, for example, for your networking equipment, to provide a little bit of extra security or air gapping, we can do that. If you want your management cluster separate, we can do that too. And then down here at the bottom, the third-party products that I was talking about, right? So Veeam is a big one. 98% of the customers I work with implement Veeam for their backup. So much so that it is by default here. Cavionics Risk Foresight is going to be a security audit compliance tool. But we've got additional optional services. Again, HCX, optional. It's not built into the bundle. If you're not using it to connect to sites or doing migration, great. Don't pay for it. Don't pay for things you don't need is kind of the moral story here. Zerto, again, is a disaster recovery tool. And then just kind of a number of what I call easy button virtual appliances, right? So we've got F5 Big IP, Juniper, Gateway Appliance, a FortiGate firewall. All that you do here is you click that on and you say, yep, I would like one. I need it to be this big, and I need it to have, these capabilities, standards with UTM, and it goes as part of our automation engine, pulls that virtual appliance image, and then once your cluster's online, you can see it there, you can use it, you can set it up to your specifications. And then VRO and VLI, more VMware tools, and then Red Hat OpenShift, again, being our containerization platform for any customers that want to start their modernization journey alongside their VMware servers. So that's kind of it, right? It's super simple. I've got a customer that not a customer, one of my sales guys likes to tell people, yeah, I brought my 4-year-old in here and taught her how to build a virtual or a VMware cluster. And I was like, well, that's cool. You just taught her how to spend a bunch of money. Hope you locked that down. But it's super simple. And like I said before, it takes all of your day one activities, all of the setup, literally days of work, and it automates it. So you make all your choices here, you click create, you walk away for a day, you come back, and we present you a vCenter. We've got your vCenter logins. We've got IP addresses for everything. We've got connectivity, nominally stood up, ready to take your firewall rules, your routes, your tunnels, that sort of thing. All of that stuff is ready to be configured by you, and it allows you the access to be able to go and do all that to however you need it to do. So we don't block you out of everything. We don't demand you set it up in a certain way. It really is your cluster at the end of the day. For better or worse, you can run it yourself, use your skills, and just get rid of the data center, get rid of your servers, and run it on ours. That's kind of the moral of the story. And it's flexible, it's consumable, you're only paying for what you use. Any questions? I just kind of did a huge info drop here, so thankfully we were recording this. But any questions for anybody out there?
No one dropped any in the chat, but if anyone had anything come up, definitely drop it in the chat. Okay, there is a question, Britt. Can you add Cavanox to a bare metal install?
Yes. So, but it's not automated. So the thing really, the heavy hitter about the dedicated platform is that all of the stuff on this screen is automated. It's all part of your monthly invoice. It's all, we've done all the contract negotiations with the third parties, et cetera, et cetera. But if you want to deploy VMware in a different manner, so for example, VMware on bare metal servers, so you want, we've got lots of bare metal servers too. Oh, this is actually VPC. But we have tons and tons of options for bare metal servers. And then one of the options on top of that is please deploy VMware on that. You can bring whatever you want to this bare metal server cluster. You can bring Cavionics, you can bring Veeam, you can bring Zerto, you can bring tools that we don't have in our catalog. Again, at the end of the day, this is your cluster. You have full access, full vCenter access. So any tools that work on an on-premise cluster work in an IBM Cloud VMware cluster. But you lose a lot of the automation. So it's a lot more do-it-yourself. It's a lot more manual configuration for things like standing up Cavionics on bare metal, standing up Veeam on bare metal. You can do it. You can do anything, but it's not automated. That answer your question?
I believe that did.
Brittany, can you hear me okay?
Matt, I think you're off mute now. Yeah, you can ask your question.
Okay. Brittany, just kind of a question around, so great presentation and the 10 reasons there. On that number 1, do you know if that is specific to the IBM Cloud offering, or do AWS and Azure and the other ones that offer a VMware offering on their cloud offer that root access and visibility to the bare metal?
It to the level we offer it, we are unique, and the level of access varies from cloud provider to cloud provider. So for example, AWS, the AWS VMware portfolio is actually a managed service provided by VMware hands-on keyboards that just happen to use AWS hardware behind the scenes. So customers using VMware on AWS actually don't have any access to their VMware cluster at all. They have to go through VMware for everything. So for standing up new servers, implementing new stuff, it's all managed for them. And so it's like I said, VMware people. So they themselves do not have any vCenter access. They do not have root access to the servers. GCP is a little bit better. GCP gives you vCenter access, but the way the GCP, it's called the VMware engine, it's kind of obfuscated a lot of the activities, right? So you don't necessarily implement stuff yourself. You go to GCP and the GCP engine implements it for you. So in that case, you do have vCenter access, but you don't necessarily have host level access. The IBM differentiator is not only is it your vCenter access, your administrative access, it's also your host access. Like we give you access to like the BIOS on these servers if you want to go start messing around with BIOS settings. We don't recommend it, obviously, but you can. So I would say to the level we provide it, that's a very strong differentiator for IBM. And the other ones fall somewhere between managed service and, here's your access. Did that answer your question?
He said yes. I think his line is muted again. And we do have one more question from attendee, and it is, compared to AWS, I understand that IBM provides a true VMware environment. Is that correct?
Like I said, they're all VMware environments. So, if you come to us, AWS, Azure, GCP, it's all VMware under the covers. And so what that means is you can hand them a VMDK and it'll run, right? The differences lie in what access do you as the owner, operator, administrator have to your cluster. And I think we just went over, IBM gives you the most access. AWS gives you the least access because it's a managed service, and the other two are kind of somewhere in the middle. So it depends on what you mean by true VMware access. The way I see this manifests a lot too, it has to do a lot with the tools that you want to bring in. So because we give you not just vCenter access, but host access, any tool that will run on premise will run in the IBM Cloud on a VMware cluster. That is not true for the other cloud providers, and that is because they obfuscate or manage components away from their customers. So it's hard, like you have to bring in only certain allowed plugins for vCenter, for example. You can't bring in anything you want to bring in. So, true VMware, yeah, they're all true VMware environments. They've all got VMware under the covers. It's just, how much can you customize it to what you need? How much access do you have? What other tool sets can you bring in? IBM gives you the most access for all of those various components. But if you're just talking about like, here's a VMDK, will it run? Yeah, it'll run anywhere. It's a VMDK.
Yeah, I have a question, real quick.
Sure.
The time you were talking about the types of VMware, so you mentioned that VMware shared is really for smaller accounts, those who want to pay, and also you mentioned that it's good for data recovery, backups. So
Yep.
what if a large organization has want to use it? Can they use it for also backup, but they have
Absolutely.
large servers and hosts?
Yeah, no, you can absolutely, any size customer can use VMware Shared as a disaster recovery target. And that's true whether you're using VMware in IBM Cloud or VMware on-premise. Veeam and Zerto both have plugins for on-premise VMware environments that will send your backups and your replicas to VMware Shared in IBM Cloud. So any size organization can use it. Where the conversations start are in the amount of risk a organization is willing to accept from an availability standpoint. And what I mean by that is VMware Shared is a multi-tenant environment, right? So IBM manages it. We make sure we have enough servers behind the scenes to handle orders to grow as necessary, right?
Yeah.
But if a tornado rips through Texas and takes out every data center in and around Dallas, right? So Dallas is a huge, if you don't know, there's tons of data centers out there. They got a lot of cheap land. They got a lot of cheap electricity. So a lot of companies are headquarters in Dallas and they have their on-premise data centers, right? If 1,000 of those customers are all using VMware Shared as their disaster recovery and they all go out at the same time, there is the potential that they all clamor for the same resources IBM has at the same time, and there might not be enough to go around. There are ways to mitigate that. So for example, you can get VMware Shared reserved. And what that means is you don't have, it's not necessarily on demand. You're paying a little bit more, but we guarantee that those resources will be available to you when you want them. So it raises the cost a little bit and it's a little bit less flexible, right? The point of VMware Shared is capacity on demand. So that's why when we're talking about huge corporations, like, do they want to use VMware Shared? They can. But how much risk do they want to take on? Typically, in my experience, what I see are larger corporations tend to have more exacting RTO and RPO requirements that require them to have some footprint online all the time, right? They've got some percentage of their workload that is absolutely needs to be online immediately, cannot go down for even a second. Those are good candidates for a dedicated footprint. And the dedicated is still flexible enough, right? Like if your full environment is 150 servers, maybe you can keep 15 online, right? And that's still going to be a significant cost savings versus doing it yourself on premise. But it lets you make sure you have those resources when you absolutely need them. Because VMware Shared, again, it's a little bit more nebulous. It's a little bit more flexible. When you get down to it, it is a finite number of resources. And so if everyone asks for them at the same time, potentially they aren't there. But there's nothing that says, you have to have fewer than X servers to use VMware Shared. No, anyone can use it. You just need to understand the risks. Did that make sense?
Yeah, it makes absolute sense. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, when I'm designing a disaster recovery environment for a customer, it all comes down to how long can they be down and how much data can they use. And one of the benefits to IBM is we just have so many different VMware options that we have a lot of directions we can go in to meet any requirements that a customer throws at us, whether they be budgetary constraints, data loss constraints, or downtime constraints. We've got options.
I think that was most of the questions, Britt. It is exactly 1:00 p.m., but those were some great questions.